Well, hello and welcome to The Sacred Speaks. My name is John Price. I'm your host, and today I am excited to bring you Terry Real. I'm going to give you a little bit of info on Terry, and then we will jump into some housekeeping and then start the interview. Number one, check out Terry Real at TerryReal.com. Terry is the author of 4 books, including the recent New York Times bestseller, Us, Getting Past You and Me to Build a More Loving Relationship. Terry knows how to lead people on a step-by-step journey to greater intimacy and personal fulfillment. His revolutionary approach to couples therapy, Relational Life Therapy, underpins all his books, courses, and teachings. RLT equips people with the powerful relational skills they need to make love work and cultivate authentic connections to themselves, each other, and the planet as a whole. A former senior faculty member of the Family Institute of Cambridge in Massachusetts and a retired clinical fellow of the Meadows Institute in Arizona, Terry has worked with thousands of individuals, couples, and fellow therapists. His extraordinary ability to save couples on the brink of divorce garnered Terry the reputation of the turnaround guy, and demand from other therapists to learn his RLT method skyrocketed. You will soon see why if you have not been connected with Terry. Certainly with the folks I work with, I recommend Us to almost every couple I've worked with. And also, we really looked at this book. I don't want to talk about it, Overcoming the Secret Legacy of Male Depression, which is a book I've been wanting to read for years. And I am so glad I did. I highly recommend it to you. Thank you for being here today, and I'm looking forward to bringing you Terry. I'd also like to recommend that you get on my website, drjohnwprice.com, drjohnwprice.com, and sign up on the newsletter to let you know about all things that are happening in this ecosystem. There's a lot that's coming out, including the Open Gate, which is a powerful monthly ritual that we participate in. It's a group process online where I introduce the idea of the little teachers, these initiating forces in our lives that we call emotions, and oftentimes we try to escape them, which is the opposite of what we could and should be doing. Our inner life is a repository of openings and portals into a broader existence, and frankly, to escape from it or try to transcend it is the opposite of the direction we need to be going. So come and join the group. You can, of course, check it out online on my website. And I recommend you looking at Terry's work. And this interview will be coming out in the beginning of November. And if you're catching it in time, I've got a workshop that's happening at Esalen. I think there's 1 spot left right now, although sign up on the waiting list. And the more people we get on the waiting list, maybe we can expand the amount of folks that are able to come. So sign up if you're interested. And that will be the last retreat that I'm leading for this year until next year. We're looking at Jung, psychedelics, and integration. So come and join us. I think that is all, except for checking out the Center for Healing Arts and Sciences at thecenterforhas.com. And as always, check out the Jung Center here in Houston, junghouston.org, all exceptional spaces, and certainly looking at and investigating the kinds of ideas that we're looking at here on The Sacred Speaks. Thanks for being here. And for now, we'll leave it there, and I'll bring you Terry.
Controls your dream. Persuades your thought.
Terry, I'm going to give an introduction and tee this up a little bit for us both. So my guest today is Terry Real, pioneering therapist, teacher, and author whose work has transformed how we understand men, relationships, and healing. And nearly 30 years ago, he published a book, I Don't Want to Talk About It, Overcoming the Secret Legacy of Male Depression, the first book to name and explore a hidden epidemic that affects countless men and families. And today we'll also talk about some of his work with couples, of course, because that's a massive part of your work. Terry spent decades breaking the silence around men's suffering, challenging cultural myths of masculinity, and teaching men and women alike how to move from disconnection into intimacy. He's the founder of Relational Life Therapy, and throughout his books, his workshops, and his clinical practice, he's become one of the most trusted guides in the work of preparing not only marriages and families, but also a collective understanding of what it means to live as a whole human being. We will certainly visit I Don't Want to Talk About It and more. This conversation is also, will circle around men, but it's not only for men. It's about how we all, men, women, children, families, are shaped by a culture and scripts of masculinity and what happens when those scripts are broken. Terry's work reminds us that suffering of men is not a private pathology, but a public crisis, and that healing requires both courage and community with deep respect. For your wisdom, gratitude, and voice, Terry, I'm honored to welcome you to the Sacred Speak.
Oh, what a beautiful intro. Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Good. So I want to just tee this up because, of course, we'll if we actually do a bit of a kind of autobiographical orientation, and talk about 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago, you write this book. I don't want to talk about it. And then, of course, you've evolved in working with couples. So just tee this up for us, your work, the scope of your work. And I really want to zero in on men, and then we'll expand that out, how it shows up with couples.
Great.
Good.
Well, let's see. Let's start with the work on men. I have a saying, I became a psychotherapist in order to get the skills I needed to have the conversation with my father I
Mm,
needed so that I would not become him.
mm,
Let that sink in. And I did have the conversation and I have not become them. John, uh, I say I am the son of an angry, depressed father. He was the son of an angry, depressed father. I have two sons of my own in their late 30s. They do not say that, and neither will their children say that.
mm.
And that's the greatest work of my life.
Whew, break the chain.
Make the
Congratulations.
change. You want to hear my most famous quote?
Yeah.
4 books, 40 years. Here's my most famous quote. Uh, family pathology. Family pathology rolls from generation to generation, taking down everything in its path like a fire in the woods until one person in one generation has the courage to turn and face the flames.
Mm,
That person brings peace to their ancestors
mm.
and spares the children that follow. That's my life's work.
Oof. Wow, that gets to the core, doesn't it? Thank you for that. Okay, so I'll put on my therapist hat for a second, and I'm curious why family therapy?
Well, it's interesting. I say I learned to become a therapist to have the conversation I had with my father. I learned to become a family therapist, learn how to have a goddamn relationship.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
there's an old saying, therapists are people who need to be in therapy 40 hours a week.
The mirrors, it's too much. I see it. It's too much. I
Uh,
can't.
uh, uh, uh,
Yeah.
uh, and I'm so delighted at my family therapy training. I mean, I
Mm,
taught at the Family Institute of Cambridge for 25 years, and a lot of family therapy wisdom has been lost. That sort of came and went. It's not what it was. I grew up in its heyday, but there's so much
mhm,
wisdom in family therapy because it's about the system. It's
mhm,
about the ecology. What I call, well, let me back up. Let me do men.
mhm,
Well, I'll tell you a story. I love to tell stories. This is a great story. So I have two great, I have many, many mentors, but I have two, the greatest mentors, Pia Melody,
oh,
who taught me about trauma and addiction, and Olga Silverstein, who taught me family
mhm.
therapy. And Olga Silverstein was a little Jewish bubby, about 4'3", in her 80s, tough as, I mean, you could lower Olga into the pit with wife beaters,
Oh,
hardcore. They didn't say that
hold her own.
they'd be like on their knees. Anyway, so I once asked Olga early on, I said, "Can I officially ask you to be my mentor?" She said, "Yeah, just remember I have a son, okay? Don't take it too far." Okay, listen. That was Olga. Tough as nails. Anyway, I meet her at Smith College where we're both teaching, and she says, "Look, I want to change your life." I go, "What, again?" She said, "Yeah, yeah." She goes, "Look, I'm writing a book about mothers and sons." Great book, by the way.
Mhm.
Olga Silverstein, The Courage to Raise Good Men, in which she forcefully argues against the bullshit, phony psychology idea that boys have to separate from their mothers in order to become men.
Yeah, I
No,
will
no,
circle up with you on
there's
this one.
so much damage.
Mhm,
That's not psychology, that's patriarchy. Anyway, so she
mhm.
ran into she said, "My very smart agent in New York has a boyfriend who's depressed," and being smart, she does a lit search. Nobody's ever written a book about male depression. She has all
Mhm.
these famous people lining up to write it. But I said, "There's this kid in Boston." I was in my, it's like 35. "There's this kid in Boston. Pick him." It's a true story, John. I go to Olga. I'm a family therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I don't believe in discrete disease entities.
Yeah.
I believe it's all relational. What do I understand? Why would I write a book about depression? She goes, "Well, they gave me $350,000." I said, "I'll be right over."
On. Yes.
So listen, so I'm on the plane to try and wow this agent, convince her I'm the guy. And I'm thinking, I'm not one of these psychology, stats type. I believe that the reason why men are depressed is because patriarchy knocks boys out of relationship. And it's traumatic.
Mm.
And then we have male entitlement to disguise the pain we're in. Then the light bulb went
Mm.
off and like, Terry, say that. Oh, okay, I can say that. And this is absolutely true. I scribbled these notes on a napkin on the plane down to New York to talk to the agent. I talked to the agent. She said, "You're the guy. The core ideas, and I don't want to talk about it on that napkin. I've saved the
Wow.
napkin." Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Here's the deal. We turn boys into men, quote unquote, through disconnection,
Mm.
enforced disconnection. We disconnect them from their vulnerabilities, from their hearts, from their feelings, and from others. And we think that's good. That's what it means to be a strong, independent man. The problem, and this brings us to us and the work on couples, traditional masculinity equals invulnerability. The more
Mhm.
invulnerable you are, the more manly you are, the more vulnerable you are, the more girly you are, which is okay. You want to tell me how you can be intimate and invulnerable at the same time?
Mhm.
And across the West, empowered women who've entered the workforce and have 50 years of feminism are insisting on levels of emotional connection from us guys that traditionally we literally have beaten out of us as boys,
Mhm.
either
Mhm.
psychologically or in some cases even physically. And so when I deal with a guy, quite often the man is what I call a wife mandated referral. I'm dealing with a guy who's on the ropes in his marriage. And I say to him, what you learned about being a good man as a kid by today's standards will ensure you're a lousy husband. What needs to happen here is nothing less than a complete reconfiguration of masculinity itself. Are you up for it? I can help you. And they say yes. But that's what it is. In order to be intimate, which is a brand new demand historically, mostly
Mhm.
led by women, in order to meet that demand, we have to move into open heartedness, accountability, empathy, vulnerability, all the things that we were taught to denigrate as kids.
And of course, this brings up one of the main questions now that you're taking this, 30 years later. What have you noticed has changed about the kind of the world of masculinity since you wrote it 30 years ago and today?
Not as much as I would wish. I'll tell you
Oh,
that right now.
I was hoping for something more there. Really?
Well, before 2016, I would have said, and I'm on record as saying that the generation of millennial men is the most progressive generation on the planet,
Yeah.
but there's been a backlash and it's more mixed.
Okay, well, let me not
Uh,
insert myself there. Yeah, go give some context to that because I'm very deeply curious about your perspective on this.
I just did a long interview for GQ of all
Mhm.
places, and they did a survey of several thousand, mostly youngish men, and there was a repeat of a survey they did in 2017, and they're not as progressive.
Mhm.
It's mixed. They're not completely back, where we were, but there's a mix.
Mhm.
And, there is something that I can understand and even get behind. I think the most brilliant DEI consultant alive, a woman named Duran Young. And you know how when people send emails, there's often a quote or a tag at the end of it. Here's a tag with every email she sends. Shame is not an effective social activist strategy.
Right. Amen to that.
But a lot of our young men, I wrote a piece about that self-righteous indignation
Mhm.
is a bad idea on the left and the right. And it's not good for the person who is self-righteously indignant. It's a mild form of grandiosity, which I think is toxic. And, no shortage of well-meaning people. I consider myself a feminist. I've been a feminist family therapist for 40 years, but there is a lot of shaming of men.
Mhm.
I grew up of a generation, the joke, the philosophical question, if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one there, does it still make a sound?
Yep.
Well, I grew up in a generation where the joke was, if a man speaks in the woods, is he still wrong?
Yeah, and I think a lot of men would still feel that.
And then there's the backlash.
Yeah,
Screw you. We're going to go back to the 50s and swing our dicks around and,
yeah,
and be utterly shameless. Shamelessness has had a great resurgence. And the worst aspects of traditional masculinity are being gleefully celebrated, not just in America, but around the world.
around the world, yeah.
So we have to, it's a backlash
Mhm.
and we're in it.
Well, you said I sent, I was reading your book and I sent a dear friend of mine, a text that said, "I'm on page 30 and I've cried twice." And that's something that I think contradicts a lot of what's happening in the larger population. The circle of men that I'm communing with are deeply intimate, deeply connected, very emotional. But I also see what you're talking about simultaneously in the younger generation. I'm blown away by not having to explain gender and sex and sexuality hardly at all. Older generations, I need to kind of tend to it and deal with people's defenses and all that. Younger generations are just there. But then also we've
Yeah.
got this massive, as you say, backlash of nationalism and all kinds of rigidities, certainties, and fundamentalisms that
And
are
misogyny
and
and
misogyny.
homophobia
Yeah,
and just the
yeah.
sort of celebration of naked dominance and shamelessness.
Mm,
Just shamelessness. No, I mean, I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. I really don't. But it's a presidential debate, and one of the two debaters running for president comments about Hillary Clinton's backside.
mhm,
I stood behind her. Trust me, there's nothing there you want to look at. He's running for president and becomes like the there's a violation of social norms of civility and decency that's being celebrated. It's like, hey, screw constraint. I'm tired of constraint. I want freedom. I want to do what the hell I want. And that is the backlash. It's a kind of a brio. There's a vitality in kicking off the traces of all. I'm barely a Freudian, but I do like a good line. If here's Sigmund Freud, the first person to throw a curse instead of a rock was the creator of civilization.
mhm,
And boy, Freud understood constraint. Constraint is part of being a civilized human being. There is a sense that the uber woke overly constricted everybody, and now we're just going to bust out and do what the hell we want, and we're gleeful about it. That's the bad. Now, there's also the progressive half. I mean, it's literally 50-50, and they're the ones who show up in your office. The backlash folks are talking to you. But I want to get to the heart of it,
mm,
and this brings me to us. What I believe, the way why I transition from working with men, and I don't want to talk about it, to working with couples and ultimately us. I believe that what ailed men was being kicked out of relationality, kicked out of connection, and that the cure was reconnecting them. So, what better way of doing that than bringing in the relationships they're in real time and using those as the crucible to
mhm.
teach them how to live relationally. So that's how I moved from working with individuals to couples.
I'm curious, what do you see? Because I'm immediately have this fantasy about because I notice people when it comes to the desperation that can come up in our couple relationships. People suffer so deeply because of what's happening in the dynamics with their romantic relationships. What is it that you see the most? What are the most common dynamics that come into your
In
office?
heterosexual relationships,
Mhm.
women are not happy. Men are not unhappy. The great story of the 20th century is the changing role of women. Men haven't changed that much. And so women have raised the bar. Women want, look, in Jane Austen's day, if you didn't get married, you were in your uncle's shack. I mean, you were screwed.
Yeah.
Nowadays, who needs you?
Mhm.
I've got a job. I've got 50 years of feminism. What do I need you for?
Mhm.
Well, I need you for the quality of our relationship. This is brand new historically. This is not a financial arrangement. This
Mm.
is an emotional arrangement. Okay. So we want intimate, both men and women to a degree. We want to be lifelong lovers, but we live in an anti relational, patriarchal culture that doesn't support that, doesn't teach anybody how to do it. And as I said, across the board, women are insisting on levels of emotional connection and intimacy that boys have literally stamped out of them.
Mhm.
You know, Eric Erickson said it's a mark of a functional culture that socialization practices for our kids equip them to meet their adult roles,
Mm.
right? That's what they're for. You're socialized to be a good husband, father, earner. Okay. The socialization practices of our boys under patriarchy equips them to be shitty husbands. The bar has moved. The job description has changed. And the very things that you learn to be tough, to be unemotional, to never be vulnerable, to not share, to not be dependent, they're horrible values for a modern husband. So women are dissatisfied. 75% of divorce is instituted by women. Women fuel the self-help industry. Even my book on men is bought by women. I like to say my, my book my books appear under pillows all over America. You know, it's
Oh,
like,
yeah, that's one.
honey, want a little action? Read this book.
Yeah. What a
Uh,
great
so women are asking men to reconfigure, and by and large, the response, including psychotherapy, has been a backlash.
Mm.
If women would just shut up, all would be well. And in therapy, okay, so you want your husband to be less angry, more emotional, more vulnerable, more compassionate, more interested in you. Okay, that's what you want. Bill, what do you want? I want my wife to be warmer and sexier. Okay, you both have issues. Uh, excuse me, this is not 50-50. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
And RLT, the therapy I've
Yeah.
created, Relational Life Therapy, was born. When I Don't Want to Talk About It came out, I started getting calls and I would hook them up. After a year, I was like, hey, if you're desperate enough and you have the resources, come to Boston. And I would spend 2 days with a couple on the brink of divorce
Mhm.
that no one else has been able to help. And I would help. And I broke every goddamn rule I'd learned as a couples therapist. But
That's your reputation, by the way. That's how I've known you. That that precedes you.
then I break all the rules.
Yeah, that's as a therapist, when I'm looking around and tracking who's doing what, what system is over here and who's the leader over there. I always thought of you that way, that you were, I don't want to play this game of like, neutral, no neutrality. I'll jump in the ring and we're going to say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's not, it's different as a person who's trained as a therapist.
Yeah, I'm not nice. You come to me, your marriage is on the ropes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make you straight. I don't know what your identity is, but let's say your wife.
Yeah. I'm married.
Uh,
I'm married to a woman.
oh yeah, your wife has had it with you.
In some way she
Uh,
has.
but let's say your wife has had it with you and you're selfish, you're disconnected, you don't share, you don't like vulnerability, either yours
Mhm.
or hers, you're a problem solver, she doesn't feel close to you. Periodically, you have temper and you drink too much.
Mhm.
Oh, by the way, you to her, you wish she had more sex with you and she can often be late. Oh, okay, that's 50-50.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so I say, hey, John, take a breath. This is going to sting. This is the part where I say, I can be nice to you or I can save your marriage. What's more important?
Save my marriage.
Okay, great. Everything she's saying about you is right.
Yeah.
And if you don't change, you're going to lose her. You're a nice guy. You are a nice guy. I rarely sit with people who aren't.
Yeah.
You've gotten sloppy and lazy and defensive, and you're not listening to her. I can help you reconfigure. Yes, you can do it. Let me coach you. Let me get you out of this. But do you love her, John? Role play, John.
Of
Do you love her?
course. Absolutely.
Do you want to lose her?
No.
Do you realize you are on the way to losing her?
Yeah, I'm scared.
You should be. I'm scared for you. Want some help?
Yeah. Desperate.
Who says no to that?
Right.
But man, I don't sound like a normal therapist.
No. No. No, but it's also I project onto couples out there who are like, Jesus, how much time have I spent in a couples therapy where we're just, what took 8 months to just build up to a point, like you kind of cut to the quick.
Yes, that's what we do. Not
So
just me, but all the RLT therapists I've trained around the world. We can all do this. We all work like this.
but just so I'm immediately in the heads of people watching and listening, like, how? Right? Like, I know you go take Terry's course, of course, I got that, but, like, there is always some kind of magical question or kind of theoretical assumption about what the change agent is in the process. What's your understanding of that?
Teaching men and women how to live relational lives.
Hmm.
Moving somebody into the jet stream of relation. I was teaching, and it was, these days I have students all over the world. I was teaching, and a beautiful young Indian man got on the call. We were talking about vulnerability and masculinity, and he said, I come from India. It's patriarchy. Like I grew up
Yes.
with patriarchy. Yes,
Yeah.
you did. I was never vulnerable in my life, but I'm a coach. I'm an executive coach, and I did a workshop. It was international, and all of these men were with me, and for 2 days, we were all vulnerable, and I was vulnerable.
Mhm.
I said, "What was that like for you?" He said, "It was a revolution." He said and I said, "You want it in your life, don't you?" He said, "I want it in my life." He said, "I wanna bring it to India. I want everybody to have that."
Mhm.
And then I turned to my students. We were all grinning, and I turned to my students, I said, "This is the ace that we have in our back pocket. We are born to be relational
Mm.
as a species.
Mhm.
It's what makes us whole and happy. It's the only thing that makes us whole and happy. It's what we're born for. It's what we're designed." So when I take a guy like that beautiful Indian man, and he moves from walled off and invulnerable and disconnected to open and vulnerable, and oh my God, other men are with him, and not just it could be his wife, it could be it could be his gay partner, whatever, but someone's there. He opens up, and boom, there's somebody there, and there's the connection is so pleasurable. That's what we have. That's why we move people. RLT is known for producing a profound change in record time. And here's how we do it. We spoon you into the jet stream of connection.
Mm.
And it's like, whoa, brother, I want more of this. Let's go. And people so what's curative is called relational life therapy.
Yeah.
What's curative is restoring the state of connection between you and spirit, you
Mhm.
and others, that what the human species is born for. And once somebody moves into that jet stream, boom, more.
Well, and that's actually one of the points that you're kind of broadening things out, not simply between self and other, but self and self. And what this is where you get kind of geeky Jungian, where you're talking about the feminine, not just as exemplified by the female, but the feminine as exemplified by the body and by relationship. And did, did you do much reading in that territory on the kind of Jungian depth orientation?
Oh boy, here we go.
I had a suspicion. Okay, go. Yes.
I don't believe in the feminine
Tell
or
me
the
more.
masculine.
I
I,
figured,
I
yes.
I don't think these are essential qualities. I think they're social construct.
Yeah.
There's three rings of patriarchy. The first is what Olga Silverstein called the halving process, HALV. You take the qualities of one whole human being, draw a line. These qualities are feminine. These qualities are
Yep.
masculine. The three concentric rings. The second ring is what I call the dance of contempt. Feminine qualities, devalued. Masculine qualities, exalted.
Mm.
What's it mean to be a man? To not be a girl. The essential relationship in Western civilization between masculine and feminine is disdain,
Yeah.
contempt. It's ugly. What it means to be a man is to be contemptuous of the feminine. And then the third ring, I call the core collusion, which is whoever is on the feminine side of the equation, whatever the body is, could be man or woman,
Mhm.
has a profound impulse to upregulate the masculine, to protect the masculine from the disowned fragility,
Mm.
even while being hurt by them. You don't talk truth to power. You don't tell the truth to men.
Yeah, you fall in love with
And
your captor.
right, and psychotherapy is up to its eyeballs in that protection.
Mm.
We don't unmask grandiose behavior. And in RLT, we lean into it.
Mm.
The first step is leverage. We empower the one down one to stand up and take them on. What's going to happen if this doesn't work? And then we have that as the negative leverage and also the positive leverage. Bill, you'll live longer. You will. You'll live 10 years longer. Your kids will like you, which is more than
Mm,
you had with your dad. And your wife will probably have sex with you again at some point, and you're not going to die a lonely old man. You want to come on board or not? And so we empower the one down one to stand up, and then we bring the one up one down,
mm,
and then we meet in the my darling Carol Gilligan, great feminist psychologist, once said, "You cannot love from the one down. You cannot love from the one up. Love demands democracy."
mm,
So we bring the one down, one up. We bring the one up, one down, and in the patriarchal binary, one down is feminine, one up is masculine. But
mhm,
I don't believe those are essential. I believe
mhm.
that's just the way our culture has divvied things up.
Well, you've said halved, and it gets to one of the things that I really, because back to the social construct piece, you say, our boys and our girls are halved. And one of the points that you make early on in the book is that boys are taught the external, but not to the detriment of their internal lives. And the girls are taught the internal to the detriment of the external. So this is all mapping onto this dynamic, right? Because that certainly does map where I see so many men that are, well, we say it like their self-worth is determined by their net worth and their capacity to provide and protect and produce. And if anything, I love that scene in The Matrix when Morpheus holds up a battery and says, we've been reduced to this. And in a lot of ways, that's not just our culture, but it's certainly the men in our culture that have. I love it with the way that you said this, and I do want to check it out with you because I say it all the time that men are defined by what we're not. And essentially, what we're taught, the two words that I had hurled at me as a child that were harsh to, gay people and to women. They used that as a kind of motivator to say you're being weak right now and stop doing that shit and comparing you to an entire subset of people. And that's the motivating factor is don't be that, don't be weak. So riff
Yeah.
on that for a little bit as you see it.
Well, Nancy Chertow wrote about this in the 70s, masculine identity is a negative identity.
Yeah.
Feminine identity is positive. What's it mean to be a woman? Well, you're this and that. What's it mean to be a man? You're not this, you're not that, you're not this, you're not that.
God.
And what's it all boil down to? I'm not a woman. That's what it
Yeah.
means. It's
Mhm.
back to that dance of content. What it means to be a man is to not be a woman. Good luck with that. And by the way, if vulnerability is womanly, which it is, then what you mean by being a man is that you're lying to yourself because we are vulnerable.
Well, and this gets to kind of modern time. Like Richard Rohr and I had a conversation a while back when he was doing his. He had written a book called Adam's Return, and we were talking a lot about suicide. And one of the things he said when he wrote his book back in '91 or '90, I think it was '94, he said, I imagine that we're going to see increases in rates of suicide that are catastrophic." And he gave a percentage of what he estimated would happen over the next 30 years. And when I interviewed him, I said, "Well, actually, really, really sad news. It's larger than what you predicted." And so, like going back to the male dynamic here on what men don't talk about and these hidden forms of depression, speak to that a little bit, like why you saw it as depression, because spoiler alert at the beginning of the book, you're saying like women were diagnosed as more melancholic and men were diagnosed more as alcoholic, and we didn't ever see what was going on underneath.
I talk about hidden. Look, there are men who have the same exact kind of depression as women do. I call that overt depression or classic depression. But I don't know. I mean, there's no research, but I'm going to say for every one of those, there are three guys who have what I call covert or hidden
Yeah.
depression. You don't see the depression, you see what the man's doing to escape it. So, drugs and alcohol, womanizing, addiction, sexual acting out, domestic violence, all forms of acting out or self medication. And early in the book, there's a table depression, women, men. Okay. Add in addiction, domestic violence,
Incarceration.
right. Guess what? They go,
That was a stunning
and
table, by the way. Yeah.
and in the 30 years, what's changed? If you go on WebMD now, or you just Google male depression, it all of it's conventional wisdom now
Mm,
that when you talk to a depressed woman, you'll get sadness. You talk to a depressed man, drinking, anger, sexual acting out. You may not get the depression per se. So everything I said is now, in fact, there's a move for DSM, whatever it is now, 6, to list male depression as its own diagnosis in recognition that it doesn't show up in these classic ways. So everything I said has become common knowledge now.
Well, just
Uh,
yeah, putting on my clinical hat, I think the book is again, it's a must read for everybody who's put it under the pillow of your partner. You also read it too, and then clinicians also need to read this book.
well, thank you. So there's the pattern of acting out self medication. Underneath that is depression.
Yeah.
And underneath that is boyhood trauma, what I call normal boyhood trauma. And so that's what we wind down.
It brings up, my wife and I have had a conversation before, like there are different expressions of the traumas that we witnessed and experienced early on, but we were sitting around the dinner table one night and I was talking about all the violence that I experienced and witnessed in my early life. And I could have talked for 45 minutes and everybody else around the table couldn't, and so there is an enormous amount of violence. What's interesting to me about your argument is that we tend to believe that's on some level inherent in male psychology. Your thing, right? Men tend to express direct aggression and women tend to express indirect aggression. So there are differences, yes?
Well, yeah, but we're social. I'm not saying that they're by nature. I don't think there's a direct aggression gene and an indirect aggression gene. I mean, who the hell knows, you
Right.
know?
Right.
But the forces of socialization are so strong
Mm,
and so saturate us. It's kind of moot. What would we exist? What would we be like without those forces? Who knows? I want to say something about how they're imposed.
yeah.
I tell this story. My oldest son's a little embarrassed that I tell it, but so my son Alexander, who has turned out to be gay, by the way, when he was 3, he liked a lot of dress up. He's always been very fanciful, and he dressed up as a bear, and cowboys and Indians. But his favorite was Barbie the Good Witch, and he had a slip and a tiara and a wand, and he'd skip around blessing things. By the way, I love this story. This is called "Don't Mess with My Wife, Belinda." A nationally recognized gender expert, it's true, it was a friend of ours, took it upon herself to call Belinda to express her discomfort
Mm,
and concern that Belinda was letting her son prance around in dresses, that she was concerned about his impending gender confusion.
mm,
Now, John, he's 3.
mm.
Okay. Here's Belinda without missing a beat. Oh my God. I'm so glad you brought this to my attention. I hadn't thought about this. Gender confusion. Wow. Hey, he also dresses up as a bear. Do you think he might have species confusion?
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's my son, and he's fabulous. So his older brother, 6, he's 3, has a bunch of boys, and Alexander goes down in the stairs in his paraphernalia, like, ta da, expecting to be a big hit, but he wasn't.
Mhm.
And these are uber liberal, crunchy granola, Cambridge, Massachusetts, blue boys. Not one word, not one word. They just looked at him. I was there. Alexander turned red. I turned red. That moment was hot.
Mm,
And my little boy went upstairs, absolutely true, took off his paraphernalia, got into jeans and a t-shirt, went down to my workroom to make swords with the boys, never touched that dress again. Now, I, as a therapist, would love to have a force that could turn something that somebody loved to something they hated in 60 seconds without a word. I'd love to have a force that's that strong. I know. But I'll tell you what that force is shame. And the way we enforce masculinity on boys is shame. And if shame doesn't work, just like you, the nasty words, and
mhm.
everybody
Yep,
listening knows exactly which 2 words those were.
yep.
Everybody knows. If shame doesn't work, we move to verbal abuse and humiliation. If that doesn't work, we'll move to physical attack.
Mhm,
But the halving, the denying half of who you are as a person, that is enforced through violence. And it's traumatizing, normal boyhood trauma. Man after man after man. The reason why you were crying your way through that book is because man after man after man in that book tells their stories,
Oh, God, it's so
and
painful.
they're heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. Yeah, but there is something about like, this is the chicken or the egg dynamic. I mean, I was in a shooting when I got shot when I was in high school, in this kinda
Jesus.
wild, and, like, I was eager to there were guns that I saw all the time, and there was violence all over the place. I mean, my middle school had a fight in the hallway every other day,
Where'd
and
you grow up?
in Houston, Texas. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and come to find out that same middle school has, fights every 3, 4 days still, And so there's this element of, okay, I mean, I get the problems with violence, and then there is violence. There is violence. And so, you make this point, Jason, is it Wilson, who's out there teaching young kids martial arts, and but he's doing so in a way, I'm pretty sure that's his name. I know I'm messing it up. He's doing so in a way that's teaching love, intimacy, vulnerability, presence, but also persistence on task and discipline and the capacity to face up to what you're scared of. So he's doing so in the context of martial arts. I just think
Right.
it's done in a way that's not so disconnecting from the whole person.
Even better. I mean, the way of the peaceful warrior.
That yeah, totally that.
People it pisses me off when people say, "Oh, Terry Real, he's trying to feminize men."
Mhm.
Screw you. No, I want whole human beings. I'm
What
not
does that
trying to
look like to you? What does it look like? The whole
a
human
whole
being?
human being.
Yeah.
Well, I like to tell stories. Let me tell you. a story. This is one of my favorite stories of my whole life. When our kids were little, we had the privilege of going to Maasai Land.
Oh,
You know the
wow.
story?
No, but yes, yes, yes.
Oh, we were there for a month, and we were there with another family who had helped build a school and had a
Mhm.
20-year. So I had a men's group with the elders of the tribe every night for 4 nights,
Wow.
and we talked about God, we talked about women, we talked about death, we talked about everything. And they were incredible,
Oh.
and, it is so unbelievably smart, by the way. Just like, "Hey, white boy," I said to them, "There's this volcano," I'm gonna mispronounce it, Dolingman guy, and all the guidebooks say they think the volcano is God, they worship the
Mm.
volcano. So I asked them, I said, "Do you worship the volcano? Do you think the volcano is your higher power?" They looked at me like I was an idiot. They said, "Do you go to church?" A synagogue, but I let that go. Yeah, I go to church. When you go to church, do you think the bricks are God?
Yeah. Wow. Beautiful.
They said, "It's a holy place. It's not God, but it's a sacred place." Hello? And over and over again, they were like, throw me on my ass that way. So I said to them, Morani means warrior, and man, it's one word, warrior man. And these guys are the real deal. I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking, the swords and spears and the ears down to here, and they
Mhm.
kill lions, and these are warriors. All right. So I say to him, in America, there's a debate about what makes a good warrior, what makes a good Marani.
Mm.
Some people say a good Marani is sensitive and responsible and a nice person. Some people say a good Marani is fierce and tough and a mother. Well, what do you guys think? Which is it? It's absolutely true, John. This little guy has got to be about 4'2". It has to be 400 years old. Clicks his little finger. He sounds like he's really pissed. It goes from English to Swahili to Maasai to Swahili to English. And here's what he says: I have no interest in talking to you about what makes a good Marani. I could care less. I will talk to you about what makes a great Marani. He said, when the moment calls for fierceness, a good Marani he will kill you.
Mhm.
This is not a man of evil, slit your throat. Don't mess with him. When the moment calls for tenderness, a good Marani will lay down his sword and shield and be sweet like a baby. A great Marani knows which moment is which. Out on the savannah,
Beautiful.
that's a real warrior talking.
Yeah.
So here's what I want: wholeness and flexibility,
Mhm.
adaptability. I want you to be able to be what you need to be in that moment. You know what? You're a lawyer and you're defending your client and you're going into court. Be a gladiator, man. I don't
Yeah.
want you to, that's not a touchy feely moment. You're at home and your little 3-year-old is on your lap crying because somebody teased them. Be a sweetheart.
Mhm.
Be what the moment needs of you. That's what I want. And have the whole range at your disposal because you haven't cut off half of your own
Yeah,
humanity.
no having. That's our yeah, no haves. That's yeah, and so, I guess, well, you critique this, initiation and rites of passage, certainly the kinds that cut off. I think this is a great point of reference here as we're talking about the warrior image being the whole person, which doesn't make a lot of sense to many people who perceive themselves to be warriors. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why our warriors are suffering so much, because we initiate them into war and then we don't initiate them back into humanness.
Oh, terrible,
Terrible. So
terrible.
as I'm aware of timeline and all that, and so I want to talk about pathways of healing and what you see and how you navigate this when you've got these guys that are halved, that are trained not to be. They've internalized decades of shame around. So there's totally unconscious of these parts of themselves. I'm assuming it's extremely difficult to navigate the complexity of that when you've got a couple who's on the verge of
You know
divorce.
what? It isn't because wholeness is what we're born for.
That's beautiful.
I have health on my side, and we want to be healthy.
Mhm.
Okay, but let me give you the map. I say
Yeah.
RLT offers a map and a toolbox to live it. So, yes, it's simple in principle, but I have to teach people how to actually do it. But let me start with the map. The first thing I do, all RLT is correct what the father of family therapy, Gregory Basin, called humankind's philosophical mistake, which is that we stand apart from nature. That's what the word individual means. We stand apart from nature. And I say that combines with patriarchy, which says not only do we stand apart from nature, but we can control it. We dominate it.
Mhm. Mhm.
What it means to be a man is to be a dominant. And by the way, you can control nature from the one up, that's more traditionally male. You can also control from the one down, that's called upregulating or codependence or enabling. Don't set daddy off is also a form of control.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mm.
The idea that you're apart from nature and in control of it is a delusion, and it will kill you. Wake up. What I offer instead is what I call ecological wisdom.
Mm.
Living relationally, living ecologically, synonyms. You're not above it, idiot. You're in it. Our relationships are our biospheres. We breathe them. And
Mm.
so I would say, hey, role play, John, you can pollute your biosphere with a temper tantrum over here, but you're breathe in that pollution with your wife's lack of sexuality over here.
Mhm.
You're an ecosystem. There's no escape. You can't, you're not a free agent. You're part
Mm.
of a system. We are interdependent. That's the new world order, not dominant, interdependent. So I don't believe in altruism. I believe in enlightened self interest. It's in my interest to keep my biosphere healthy because I breathe it. That's the new world order. And it's very pragmatic. I have these big burly guys and they go, okay, but why should I have to work so hard just to please my wife? And I go, knock, knock. You live with her. It's in your interest. Wake up. That's the new world. It's in my interest. It's in my interest to protect the ecosystem that I'm in. There's no such thing as over there anymore. At the broadest level, the plastic I throw into the ocean is now living in my brain.
Yeah.
I have microplastics in my brain. There is no over there. To be political for a moment, people say, oh, we got to stand up to China. Tanks could be rolling down Fifth Avenue. Bubala. They don't need to bring tanks down Fifth Avenue. All they need to do is call in their debt. They own Fifth Avenue.
Yep.
But they can't do that because if Beijing called in his debt and New York fell today, Beijing would fall tomorrow.
Yeah.
But even the wars that are you can invade your neighbor next door, but don't invade the neighbor next door to him. You're not going to get away with it.
Mhm.
And, when we think relationally, ecologically, everything changes. For example, I have 8 million sayings myself. The relational answer to the question who's right and who's wrong is who cares. What matters is how are we going to work this thing out in a way that's going to work for us. And from a relational perspective, if one of you wins and the other one loses, you both lose.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's not but John, that's not idealistic no, this is real politics. If one of you wins and the other one loses, the loser will make the winner pay for it.
Yeah.
It's not in your interest. And that's true if I'm talking about somebody's living room, or if I'm talking about 2 peoples who are living next to each other.
Mhm.
I'm gonna get
Mm.
into trouble, but I don't care. Look, I'm a Jew. It breaks my heart what's happening over there. And what you'll hear from Israelis is, oh, we have to defend ourselves. We need security. You will never get security by depriving the people next to you of their rights. They
Mhm.
will continue to attack you endlessly. Why wouldn't they? And you have to find a way to live with each other. The polarization in my country right now. I'm writing a little piece. A couple therapists looks at America, and the sort of self-righteous left and the self-righteous right are like a warring couple
Mhm.
that are at each other's throats. No one's
Yeah.
listening to anybody, and the idea is compromise is surrender. And what I said in the article is what the extreme factions of America, which do not represent the majority of Americans,
Mm-mm.
what they forget is the same thing a warring couple forgets in my office, which is, hello, you live together. You have forgotten that you live together. It is in your interest to figure out a way to live together because you do. And it's the same correction of the forgetting that we're connected, whether I'm talking about saving our environment, or I'm talking about the spiritual sickness in the world, or I'm talking about rival political factions or war between two countries. It's all the same. One of the things I say, John, is you may not be able to bring peace to the Middle East, but you can bring peace to your living room and bedroom. Start there because it's exactly the same shift in consciousness and new skills.
Mm.
How are you and I going to work this thing in a way that's going to work for both of us? We're a team. We care about each other. We live together. Let's roll up our sleeves and get this done.
Whew. Thank you for that. So, and thanks for this article. I've always imagined that we need to have a council of family therapists in our like government, commenting on these dynamics. Where do you get challenged? Where, like, when you think back in your history, who or what challenges you the most?
Wow. Well, my wife is a pain in the ass. I mean,
It's the truest. I'm amen, brother. Oh my god.
I mean,
Yeah.
John, I like to say,
Spiritual partner, huh?
yeah, I like to say, every relational skill I teach has been clinically tested. Belinda's the clinic.
Oh,
So my
yeah.
marriage has been instructive
Yeah.
and uh, and helpful. Here's something from that I learned from Carol Gilligan.
Yeah.
And I was in Jerusalem, and I was with all these black hat Jews, and they knew the phrase like "Ezer Connecto." So here's the deal. Everybody knows that God made Eve out of Adam's rib to comfort him, right?
Mhm.
We all know that. If you go back and you read the actual Aramaic, God made Eve out of Adam's rib to comfort him by opposing him. Ezer Connecto. They all know the phrase.
Mhm.
My marriage has been the greatest teacher. My marriage and my kids, my
Mhm.
family. It's all well and good. You know, Felicia will say, "Why don't you use some of the relational skills that you tell everybody?" I go, "What? You don't want me to actually do this shit, do you?" I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, go you actually that's my next question because I heard this amazing you would know him, this amazing psychologist, Boston, guy, and he's parenting guy, and he was giving a lecture one time at the school, and he said, on Father's Day every year, this television show, the morning show has me out to talk about parenting. And they said they one year after, 10 years of him doing it every Father's Day, they said, "Hey, we got an idea for you. Why don't we bring your sons on?" And the sons, of course, like, "We're gonna totally destroy you, dad." And that is the like, comment on that about, like, physician heal thyself, what have you noticed about the wounded healer here?
I'll tell you something interesting. I did a podcast with my son on masculinity. It was beautiful. No, it was good.
Yeah.
No, we have very close relationships
Oh,
with our kids, both of them. And we were. I've got one kid. He's a doctor now, but he was a professional ballet dancer, and his brother is this big burly jock baseball player blessed with 2 therapists and a gay brother, and he used to say and he's got red hair too, and he used to say, "I'm gonna go to South Boston and find my, Boston Irish family that's my real biological
yeah.
family." I don't know. But anyway, but we were picking up Justin at baseball practice in Florida, and he got in the car, and all the 4 of us were, like, processing his coach and everybody, and he said, no one talks like the 4 of us. I just want you to know out there, no one. And we did our first convention, RLT convention, and I brought my kids up on stage.
Whoa.
And my son, the jock, said, son of 2 psychotherapists, you want to tell me about how your dog died when you were 4 and you've never gotten over it, or your nanny molested you, or I'm there. I
Yeah,
mean,
got
I'm
it.
yeah. He said, "It took me into my 20s to know how to crawl up on a bar stool, have a beer, and talk about the game."
Yes. Yeah.
What can I
Consciousness,
say?
the most common
Yeah.
word in the house. Yeah, but that
Eh,
that is something. I mean, because, quite frankly, Terry, to me, it's just hopeful. I mean, I think one of the toughest things for my wife sometimes is when, here I'm a youngian, I've worked with parents, I've worked in private schools and adolescent residential treatment and adoption and foster care, and people will look at her and go, "Oh my, it's got to be so amazing to be married to a therapist," and she's just like, "Oh shit." Like, I say to trying to
if
be
you
as
only knew.
yeah, yeah, but trying to be authentic, I say, "Look, knowing this stuff does not exempt you from having to go through the passages of suffering and the inevitabilities of life."
Yeah,
And so yeah, the laboratory of your home is your
yeah,
spiritual practice.
yeah, it really is. And but in terms of challenges, it bothers me when people misconstrue what I'm saying and then write me off.
Mm.
But more and more, people just aren't doing that so much anymore.
Well, because the culture is kind of meeting some of your orientation more and more?
And it's both. It's just so heightened. There are people who are dying. Well, I mean, what I am saying is just water in the desert for those who need to hear it.
Yeah.
And then there are other people who just want to, I don't know. It's not really a dialogue.
Mhm.
It's bellowing.
So just as we're closing out, I want to see if there's anything else that you would like to include in our conversation today. Anything we're leaving out, any threads that are left hanging?
I just want to say, look, I said there is a vision. There's also a skill set. I would like our boys and girls and non-binary kids to be taught how to have a fight, how to
Mhm.
get mad, how to make repair, how to stand up for yourself, basics. And I'd like that taught in schools. With that not in place, I'll give you a little commercial. We have a whole suite of courses for the general public. I'm really proud of. I've moved from just teaching therapists to teaching what I call normal people. And so we have a beautiful course on self esteem,
Mm.
on boundaries, on basic relationship skills, and they're really practical and they can really help people. So if you're listening, take the course yourself. If you're a therapist, recommend them to your clients. Your work will go better and you'll look good.
Where should
And
people find that? Where do they find all your info?
just go to
Yeah.
terryreal.com or relationallife.com, 2 L's, relational life, and you'll
Yeah.
see them.
Terry, thank you so much for your time. This is a joy, and it's as I'm sure you're told often, and that regardless of if it's your intention, just the content of what you're talking about is a loving confrontation of the ways that we show up, certainly as men, and how we can do our work to be strong men and take ownership for what we need to take ownership for, and stop projecting it out onto the world and blaming others for it.
Strong,
So,
big-hearted men, as you are, and that just radiates off of you. It's a pleasure to be in your presence.
yeah,
So thank you. And
you
thanks
too,
for the work
Terry.
you're doing.
Amen. You too. Thank you so much. Everybody go check out Terry Real. Thank you, sir.
Bye, John.